Hey everybody, it's your old buddy John here to give you an interesting factoid or whatever, and I think I'm going to call this segment, or these segments, something interesting. So we're just going to think of something interesting that has happened in history, or a little bit of knowledge or something like that. These stories may have a cool twist ending or maybe not, but I will say that today's story is true and fairly interesting. Everybody's heard of the Titanic. When I say that name, it immediately conjures to mind this beautiful black ship glistening in the seas, and of course the movie and the actual tragedy and everything else that happened, the opulence of the ship and all that. But did you know that Titanic was one of 3 ships that were built exactly to very similar specifications, I should say. And Titanic was actually the second ship. The first ship, the first Titanic, if you will, is called the Olympic. And the Olympic, unlike the Titanic, had a 35-year career crossing the Atlantic back and forth until it was finally outdated and they scrapped it. Then there was Titanic. I don't think we need to talk about Titanic. If you want to hear about Titanic, then there's a zillion other places to learn about Titanic. But there's also a third ship called Britannic. It was originally going to be called Gigantic, but after the Titanic disaster, they were like, people are not gonna dig that. So anyway, Olympic, Titanic, Britannic. Britannic hit a mine and sank. It was never outfitted in its luxurious fate, but Britannic hit a mine and sank as a hospital ship in World War I. Olympic, like most ships, was commissioned by the British government as a troop carrier, and also maybe not. I'm sorry, it wasn't strictly a troop carrier, but for use in government business as needed. But Olympic has the interesting distinction. Don't get caught up on that, what I just said, because it may not be completely right. But this part is right. The Olympic has the interesting distinction of being the only passenger ship to sink a German U-boat. And the way that happened was German U-boats, research Lusitania. Have you heard about this? German U-boats were sinking passenger ships. They were sinking merchant vessels. And, of course, submarines are almost an undefeatable form of sea combat. In fact, in today's Navy, there's 2 types of ships: submarines and targets, and that's it. Submarines rule the water and always will. But back then, they really did, because we had very little defense against it, and so submarines were sinking ships. And at that time, the German army was indiscriminate about the types of ship that they were sinking. Lusitania was a ship filled with completely innocent passengers. Olympic was too. So that is why whenever Olympic was crossing the ocean one time, and a submarine surfaced next to it, and I'm not sure if it shot at Olympic, but it was obvious that this submarine had the intention of sinking Olympic along with everybody on board, which would have been a tragedy just like Titanic. Olympic decided to do something about it, and there was a major advantage to these big ocean liners versus the submarines, and that was speed. The ocean liners had big motors and were sleekly designed to cross the Atlantic, whereas submarines now are different, but submarines then were very slow and had to surface to shoot and a number of things like that. But maybe a submarine might only make, say, 8 or 9 knots, a German submarine at the time. But a giant passenger liner like that, I think Titanic was going 21 knots when it hit the iceberg. Olympic probably had a top speed of 26, 27 knots. So pretty quick. Olympic decided, we're not going to have this. It's like, we're going to do something about this. Instead of what they would usually do is run in a zigzag pattern and hope that the submarines couldn't follow them and this, that, and the other. But Olympic's like, if we're going down, we're taking them with us. So anyway, Olympic, imagine the horror of the U-boat captain when Olympic turns around and starts coming straight at your U-boat. And you're up, you're surfaced, you can't get down in time. And so Olympic hits turns around and hits this submarine broadside. And they said that people that were there saw both halves of the submarine go like this and down. And therefore, saving their own lives and also getting rid of another pesky submarine, Olympic became the only ship in World War I the only civilian ship and passenger ocean liner in World War I to sink a German U-boat.